Hey guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel, Mastering the Wedding Photography Biz.
I'm Hunter.
And I'm Sarah.
And if you are confused or even just unfamiliar with the idea of a business expense for your new or new-ish photography business, then keep watching this video.
We are going to dive into the basics of what a business expense is, why you need to keep track of them, and even some examples of photography business expenses that you just might not be thinking about.
So we're going to start off with a very simple definition of a business expense in case this is new to you. And a business expense is basically any cost incurred in the ordinary course of running your business. And so in other words, a business expense is really anything that your business spends in order to keep running and to keep operating.
Yeah. Now, last week, we actually talked about why we believe business owners need a strong personal budget. And it is really important to keep in mind right at the jump of this video that your personal finances and your business finances should be totally separate if you are running a real business.
Everything we talked about last week was personal. This week we're talking about business. And by the way, if you are just getting started and are still building your portfolio and haven't really started, getting paid all that much for shoots, then it's really no big deal if your money is all in one place and you haven't really gone through the process of separating your business from your personal. Because if you're only making, a couple $100 a year, in the eyes of the government, you're probably not actually operating a business just yet anyway.
However, if you are making more than a few $100s per year from your photography business, then you should really make your business legit and legal and start tracking your business expenses and making sure that those expenses are being paid for from a business checking account or with a business debit or credit card.
So if you are, for example, paying for a new camera, or if you have a subscription to, Adobe Lightroom or Pixieset or a website builder, anything like that, obviously those are going to be business expenses, but those should be kept totally separate from a financial perspective from personal expenses like buying groceries for you and your family, a vacation that you went on, or like the dinner you had out with friends the other night.
And we are going to jump into the specifics of business expenses a little bit later, but first let's talk about why they are so important.
So the number one reason why you really should be keeping track of your business expenses is for tax purposes. Now, basically, what your business spends to keep running will not be counted against you when the time comes to file your taxes. In other words, if you do this right, you will owe less taxes.
Yeah. So when you go to pay your state and federal income taxes, you are going to owe a percentage of what your business made that year. However, the number that you are going to be taxed on is your gross business income, or the overall money that you take in minus your business expenses. This is also called your net profit.
So that minus business expenses is sort of the operative word for this whole video.
It's like the whole point of
exactly.
this video. Really.
And we're going to give you an example as to why this could be really important and really powerful. And so let's just say you decide to run a lemonade stand one afternoon. And let's say that you sell 100 cups of lemonade for $1 each. And so at the end of the day, you have $100 cash in your hand. Now, let's say that the IRS comes knocking at your lemonade stand and they say, hey, we saw you made some money. You owe us, some percentage of what you made today.
However, if you are a smart lemonade stand owner, you know that you spent and kept track of the money that you spent. Say you spent $20 putting up the lemonade stand, you spent $20 on paper cups, and then you spent $20 on the lemons and the sugar. So even though you technically were paid $100, your gross business income, that doesn't mean that you actually made $100. Once you subtract your business expenses, the $20 that you paid for each of those things, your actual net profit was only $40.
And here's why this is super important. Let's say the government was asking for 30% cut of your income, which, by the way, is not an unrealistic number for self-employed individuals. Now, if you're not keeping track of those business expenses, you might just say, oh, hey, government, I made $100 today. And so you would owe 30% of the $100, which is $30. But, whether you keep track of it or not, you had to buy the lemons in order to sell the lemonade, right?
But whether you tracked your business expenses or not, you did have to buy all of those things, the cups, the lemon, the sugar. So at the end of the day, since you didn't keep track of your expenses, you are only going to walk away with $10, which is not a lot to show for a full day's work.
But if you were tracking your expenses, then when the government came knocking for their 30% cut, you could tell them, hey, I made 100, but I spent 60 on business expenses, and so my net was only 40. And so now their 30% cut, rather than being $30, is only $12. And so instead of being left with $10 at the end of the day, you're left with $28 at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that difference between $10 and $28 might not seem like much, but keep in mind, going from $10 to $28 almost triples the amount of your own hard-earned money that you get to take home. So if we multiply those numbers by 2,000, so they're like scaled up to the level of a real small business, suddenly the difference between taking home $20,000 at the end of the year versus taking home $56,000 at the end of the year seems like a lot.
Yeah, that makes a big difference, right? Now, full disclaimer, if all of this feels super overwhelming and confusing, or you haven't even done the work of setting up your business, legally with an LLC and a bank account and all those things, then we might want to take a little step back, and you might benefit from a more sort of foundational understanding of the basics of how a business actually works. And we understand that learning about, establishing an LLC and, income, expenses, taxes, contracts, these things are all very boring and not nearly as fun as going out and taking pretty photos. But if you ever want to own a real business one day, learning about these things is absolutely essential to at least do once really well at the start of your business and set up some systems sort of moving forward.
And if you would like to learn some of those things from us, then we would encourage you to check out the workshop that we actually hosted last year called Photography Business Basics, Setting Up a Legit and Legal Photography Business. The recording of that entire 2-hour workshop is for sale on our website, the link of which is in the description.
Now, as promised, we are going to hit somewhat briefly on a few common mistakes when it comes to business expenses, things that you might be doing wrong already without realizing it. And full disclosure, most of these are from when we did them wrong early in our own business.
Yeah. So the first mistake that you can make is just thinking that anything you can do, you can justify as a business use is suddenly counting as a business expense.
Right? You don't get to make up the rules. As you probably could have guessed, the federal government does not want to let anyone who owns a business basically just write off anything they want as a business expense. And so,
pretty sure that's money laundering.
Tax evasion, maybe?
Yeah,
somewhere in that flavor. And so the rules surrounding what is and is not a business expense are fairly specific. And so that's why we are going to give you guys some of these examples.
For example, if you go to a cafe to get some work done, edit some photos, send some emails, whatever, and while you're there you buy a coffee or a sandwich while you work, that is actually not a business expense. If it were, then everyone who is self-employed would probably just write off every meal they ever purchase ever.
Yeah. However, if you take a client out to coffee as you are meeting with them to do a sales meeting to, see if they want to hire you for your wedding photography services, or if you say, meet your accountant over lunch, then it becomes a business meeting. And a meeting that pertains to your actual business and is necessary for the running of your business, that meal might be partially or fully tax deductible.
Another mistake that we made early on in our business was thinking that any clothing that we bought specifically to photograph weddings in would actually count as a business expense.
Right, makes sense. It's intuitive.
Yeah, so Hunter, who has almost nothing in his life that requires him to actually wear a suit other than photographing weddings, when he went out and bought a $500 suit that was dry fit and stretchy and perfect for those really sweltering wedding days, we thought that we could business expense that.
I was like, I'm not going to use this for anything but weddings, so pay for it with the business card. The thing is, only clothing that is specifically branded with your company's logo, or clothing that just absolutely cannot be used for anything other than business use, only those types of clothing can actually count as a business expense. And so if you were a professional beekeeper and you bought that crazy beekeeper outfit with the netting around the face, that is obviously not personal clothing. You were not going to wear that out to the grocery store. So that could be a business expense because that is necessary for the running of your business. Or another example, if you were running a sports team, then buying your players' jerseys, even though those are technically clothing, that is obviously necessary for the running of your business. But as photographers, for us, the only clothing that's necessary for us is also normal clothing. And so just because you might buy that cool outfit or that cute top or that nice suit to a wedding does not mean you get to business expense it, no matter how often you're actually going to wear it for a photo shoot.
Mm-hmm. Now, inevitably, there are also going to be certain areas of your life where your business and your personal life actually intersect. And your car is a really great example of this. You know, we don't know any self-employed photographers who bought their car 100% on their business and it sits in the driveway unless they're going to a shoot or a wedding.
In all likelihood, you or someone in your family has a car that, you know, you or they personally own, and you also use it when you drive to photo shoots or to weddings. And the easiest way to sort of figure out, okay, how do I make the most out of this, is to basically track every single one of your miles and then determine, okay, what percentage of what I'm using this car for is for business purposes. And so, for example, let's say you have a car and you drive it 10,000 miles in 1 year, and you know, because you've been keeping track, that 4,000 of those miles are for your photography business. So what that means is basically 40% of your use of that year is for your business, and so 40% of the costs associated with running that car are tax deductible.
So then you can either do a just complicated calculation where you take that 40% and multiply it by every gas fill up, every oil change, new set of tires,
any loan payments, or you know what, if you don't own the car outright, then you know stuff like that. But
all the receipts.
Yeah.
Or you can just take the standard mileage deduction, which as of this recording is like 65.5 cents per mile, multiplied by those 4,000 miles that you drove for work.
So honestly, if you're going to do this well, the easiest way to do it is to get an app that will do this for you. And so we use Mile IQ. We have used it for the last 5 years. It basically tracks all of your drives in the background, and then every now and then I just go in and say personal, business, personal, business, personal, business. And it costs $60 a year for like the full version, and we have written off on average $4,000 worth of drives, which is, you know, some number of miles multiplied by whatever the federal government says that rate is. And honestly, we don't have to worry about keeping receipts or anything like that. So we just pay for our car completely out of our personal account, and then at the end of the year, Mile IQ says you get to take this much off your taxes.
Another area that actually has a lot of crossover is your home. If you are like most photographers, you run your business out of your own home, you edit photos, email clients, and just generally manage your business from the place in which you live, whether you own or rent.
Now, if the room that you work in is a real room and is used exclusively for business, then you can write off a percentage of your housing costs. And so, for example, if you live in a 1,000 square foot apartment and the home office that you only use for business is 300 square feet, then you can basically write off 30%. So, you know, 1,000 divided by 300, 30% of all of your housing expenses. So that's rent or mortgage, that's, you know, insurance, like homeowners and renters insurance, that is your utilities, your internet, 30% of everything.
Mm-hmm. However, if your home office actually has to be its own physical room, in other words, 4 walls and a door.
Yeah.
And it must be devoted solely to your business. If your desk is in your bedroom, or you work in like just using your laptop sitting on the couch in your living room, you don't actually have what's considered a dedicated workspace, and none of your, like in that case, none of your housing costs are tax deductible.
Now, there are a ton of other examples, many of which we are going to get into in that Photography Business Basics workshop, but ultimately one of the most important pieces of advice is to always make sure that you are checking on these things at the end of the year with a tax professional or a certified public accountant, because the laws where you live may be different from the laws where we live, or even if you live in the same exact town as us, they might have just changed since we recorded this video.
But that's it for this week.
Guys, thank you for watching. If you want more great content and advice for learning to take better images and run a successful photography business, we would encourage you to join our Facebook community, Mastering the Wedding Photography Biz, with Hunter and Sarah.
In that group, we are building a free community of other photographers who are also building their photography businesses and just helping each other out along the way.
And of course, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, all of those good things to help other photographers find our stuff as well.
See you next time.
See you guys.